The pounding on my front door was so aggressive it rattled the frame. Through the peephole, I could see two police officers standing on my porch, their expressions stern and professional. My heart raced as I opened the door, completely bewildered by their presence at 7 in the morning. The taller officer looked down at his notepad and said in a formal tone that I was being accused of violating a court order regarding an unauthorized pool installation. He explained that Patricia Sanderson, the HOA president, had filed an emergency complaint claiming I was destroying evidence and endangering the neighborhood. I stood there in my pajamas, mouth agape, as he read off accusations about a $10,000 lawsuit for damages to community property values. This whole nightmare had started just 3 weeks earlier when I moved into my new home on Maple Ridge Drive. The neighborhood seemed perfect with its tree-lined streets and well-maintained lawns. I had barely finished unpacking when I first noticed Patricia making her rounds. She walked with purpose, a clipboard clutched to her chest and a scowl permanently etched on her face. The first letter arrived exactly 1 week after I moved in. The official HOA letterhead had proclaimed in bold letters that I was in violation of Section 12(4) of the community bylaws regarding unauthorized pool installations. I read it 3 times, each time more confused than the last. I walked to my backyard and stared at the patchy grass and overgrown flower beds. There was definitely no pool. I immediately called the HOA office, certain this was a simple clerical error. The phone rang twice before Patricia answered with a tone that suggested I was interrupting something far more important. I explained politely that there must be some mistake as I had not installed any pool nor did I have plans to do so. She responded with a condescending laugh and informed me that she had personally witnessed the pool during her inspection. When I insisted she come look at my yard, she accused me of trying to hide the evidence with what she called strategic landscaping. She said she had photographic proof and that ignorance of HOA rules was not an acceptable defense. The situation escalated quickly from there. Daily fines began arriving in my mailbox, each one adding another $100 to my supposed debt. Patricia started sending cease and desist letters demanding I remove the non-existent pool immediately. She even posted warnings on the community Facebook page about the dangerous precedent I was setting. My neighbors began whispering when I walked by. Some avoided eye contact entirely, while others gave me sympathetic looks that suggested they had their own Patricia stories. Tom Bradley from 2 houses down quietly told me over the fence that Patricia had once fined him for having the wrong shade of beige on his shutters. 2 weeks into this madness, a process server knocked on my door with official court documents. Patricia had filed a civil lawsuit seeking $10,000 in damages. The complaint alleged multiple code violations, depreciation of surrounding property values, and something called visual disruption of community aesthetics. The court date was set for the following month. I spent that evening reading through the complaint in disbelief. Patricia claimed my secret pool was affecting drainage patterns and creating a mosquito breeding ground. She included blurry photographs that showed nothing but shadows and grass. One image had a red circle drawn around what appeared to be my garden hose coiled against the fence. The next morning, I was in my backyard taking my own photographs for evidence when I heard Patricia shouting from the sidewalk. She accused me of destroying evidence and threatened to call the authorities. I ignored her and continued documenting the complete absence of any pool-related structures. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. Patricia had called 911, claiming I was operating heavy machinery and digging up my yard to hide the pool. She told them I was creating a dangerous situation that required immediate intervention. The officers looked as confused as I felt when they saw nothing but me holding a camera in my perfectly normal backyard. After the police left with a warning to Patricia about misusing emergency services, I knew I needed professional help. I hired David Thornton, a local attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. He took one look at the case and shook his head with a mixture of amusement and disgust. He had dealt with Patricia before. David immediately filed a counter-suit for harassment, defamation, and abuse of process. He also hired a professional surveyor to document every inch of my property. The surveyor spent 3 hours measuring and photographing, ultimately producing a detailed report confirming the obvious fact that no pool existed on my property. We also discovered something interesting during our investigation. Patricia had been HOA president for 7 years, during which time she had filed over 40 lawsuits against residents. Most were settled out of court when exhausted. Homeowners paid smaller amounts just to make her go away. Her pattern of behavior was clear and well documented. The court date arrived on a humid Thursday morning. The courtroom was packed with neighbors who had taken time off work to witness what they hoped would be Patricia's comeuppance. She sat at the plaintiff's table, wearing a severe black suit and radiating confidence that bordered on smugness. Patricia presented her case with theatrical flair. She showed her blurry photographs and spoke passionately about maintaining property values. She even brought a poster board with arrows pointing to various spots in my yard where she claimed the pool infrastructure was hidden. Her final piece of evidence was a water bill showing slightly higher usage, which she attributed to my secret pool. When it was our turn, David methodically destroyed every single claim. The surveyor testified about his findings, showing higher solution, photographs and measurements that proved no excavation had ever occurred. We presented 5 years of satellite images showing my backyard unchanged. The water bill increase was easily explained by my new sprinkler system, which I had properly registered with the HOA. The judge's expression grew increasingly irritated as the evidence mounted. When David presented Patricia's litigation history and pattern of harassment, the judge actually rubbed his temples as if fighting off a headache. The courtroom was silent except for the occasional shuffling of papers and suppressed coughs from the gallery. After deliberating for less than 10 minutes, the judge delivered his verdict with barely contained frustration. He dismissed Patricia's case with prejudice and granted our countersuit. He ordered Patricia to pay $15,000 in damages plus all legal fees. He also issued a restraining order preventing her from coming within 50 feet of my property. But the judge was not finished. He lectured Patricia about the serious nature of frivolous lawsuits and the damage they cause to the legal system. He noted her pattern of harassment and strongly suggested the HOA board review her position. Patricia's face turned various shades of red as she realized the magnitude of her defeat. 3 weeks later, an emergency HOA meeting was called. The community room was standing room only as residents lined up to share their stories about Patricia's reign of terror. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president, effective immediately. She stood up and stormed out, but not before, knocking over a chair and muttering threats about appealing everything. Several months passed peacefully. Patricia kept her distance, though I occasionally saw her curtains twitch when I worked in my yard. Then one evening, while walking my dog past her house, I noticed something that made me stop in my tracks. There, in her backyard, was a small excavated area roughly the size and shape of a pool. Next to the hole sat several boxes labeled Premium Pool Kit Deluxe Edition. A delivery receipt fluttered in the breeze caught on her fence. The irony was almost too perfect. The woman who had sued me for a non-existent pool was installing her own pool without HOA approval. I took a photo and sent it to David with a simple message asking if we should report it. David replied within minutes saying the new HOA board was already aware. Patricia had failed to submit the required permits and architectural plans. She now faced the same fines and legal action she had weaponized against others. The new board president had already scheduled a hearing where Patricia would need to explain her unauthorized construction. At the hearing, Patricia tried every excuse and manipulation tactic in her arsenal. She claimed the pool was medicinal, that the rules did not apply to former board members, and finally that everyone was conspiring against her. The board was unmoved. They fined her $20,000 and ordered the immediate cessation of all construction. When she refused to comply, they filed criminal charges for violation of county building codes. The final court appearance was swift and decisive. The judge, who remembered Patricia well from our case, showed no sympathy. She was found guilty of multiple violations and sentenced to 200 hours of community service plus $30,000 in combined fines. As the gavel came down, Patricia's facade finally cracked. She burst into tears, realizing her years of petty tyranny had finally caught up with